Disclaimers, this is all just my opinion. Trigger warnings for cheating, suicide, sexual assault, and physical and emotional abuse. People like to rightfully criticize Colleen Hoover's books for glorifying domestic violence and abusive relationships and just all around bad writing. But some also criticize her books for having scenes some people might feel are titillating. And I don't think there's anything bad about that. I just want to make it clear that I don't hold anything against Colleen Hoover or her readers for enjoying and writing that sort of thing. Finally, this book was already garnering attention before its release because it had to do with an author experiencing controversy regarding a live-action adaptation of their book, and Colleen Hoover just went through that with It Ends With Us. I won't lie to you, there are similarities between the plot of the book and Hoover's real life, but I don't think it's productive to peer into her life to analyze this book. I think that's parasocial, and I know that there is so much more to criticize this book for. Our book opens with Petra Rose, the formerly famous author of A Terrible Thing. Unfortunately, during the live-action adaptation, fans were deeply disappointed to find out that one side of the love triangle had been completely cut out of the film. And though Petra said she had no hand in it, leaked texts reveal that she actually okayed it, meaning she betrayed the fans. The book actually opens with these two very realistic book podcasters talking about Petra Rose before inviting on the executive producer of the movie, Alistair, who's also been talking shit about Petra. It's then that Petra stops listening to the episode. That's right, our main character of the book is an author who listens to podcasts about herself. Not even the high-profile ones, I mean a podcast with 2,000 subscribers. Petra hops on a call with her best friend Nora, and together they bemoan the challenges of fame, the horrors of cancel culture, and how cruel the internet is. And this is where the book immediately started pissing me off. Cancel culture has been around for 20 years and has been hung dry by every single PSA in school assembly. Colleen Hoover brings nothing new to the conversation. What's missing from most critiques of internet hate, including Hoover's, is how it's just another tool used to punish minorities. It's depicted as this nondescript blob of people on the internet piling onto someone just because they're feeling mean. And sometimes that happens, but most of the time, people just relentlessly bully minorities or cringe, which you're more likely to be if you're a minority. The foundations of cancel culture, losing your livelihood because of public backlash, are rooted in punishing women like Janet Jackson, Ingrid Bergman, and the Chicks. Unsurprisingly, Hoover, who has been a target of this kind of backlash herself, talks about none of this. She doesn't mention parents taking out their lax supervision on her, or misogynists who hate women pleasure, just former fans who hate without knowing the full story. Which is funny, because Petra isn't willing to give the full story. She hasn't made any statements defending herself because she thinks she's above it. But considering how much is occupying her mind, I'm gonna guess that was a lie. After all, she could lose her house because of the dip in book sales. So we know from the first chapter that Petra is psychologically wrecked and financially unstable. Now we just need to find a man to exploit her. The cancellation, the dip in book sales, the general stress of it all, it's given Petra some very intense writer's block. So she's heading on a writer's retreat. She arrives at the very isolated cabin, meets the rental owner Louis, and then goes on a paragraph-long rant about how much she hates Corgis. Corgis don't even show up. She just wants to talk about something she hated. But, fuck you, Petra. You're a horrible person, so everything's a Corgi. For some reason, I was under the impression that Louis was a farmer. He's not, but I am not rereading the book just to find some reference to him. He's barely in this book anyway. You also meet Louis' wife, Mari. She's bubbly, sweet, blunt, and will be Petra's only other friend besides Nora. That night, Nora convinces Petra to go live from their Facebook group to talk with fans for inspiration. She promises to vet all the questions, and Petra literally blocks the chat from view because she can't stand anyone being mean to her. Would now be a good time to mention that the movie came out a year ago? One thing we learn about Petra from the scene is that she takes to heart what people say in their reviews. When they say her writing is unrealistic, she feels like she has to experience everything that's happened in her book, just that she really knows what it feels like. That's kind of a big issue to have with your own writing. There's only so much stuff you can pull out of your own life, so pretty much everything you write won't be stuff you've experienced, which is probably why Petra is so insecure this entire book. It's an okay scene, except for a confusing rant about book bans and telling authors never to write again, and the irony of making a living off of that sort of content. I wonder if it was supposed to be this vague, or Colleen was just avoiding talking about how most banned books are by queer, black, and brown authors, or about the sorts of things people would rather sweep under the rug, like sexual assault or white supremacy. Then police show up to inform her that a man has killed himself down the road.
Boy, that escalated quickly.
Yeah. Petra's obviously shaken by this, but nowhere near as shaken as seeing a beautiful, cop who she immediately is inspired by, because her book is about a girl named Rhea and her affair with a married cop named Cam. This guy's name is Nathaniel Saint, and this is who exploits Petra. Petra and Saint's first meeting is ridiculous. Being a writer comes with a constant sense of distrust, no matter what uniform someone might be wearing. I've created too many plot twists, written too many villains disguised as heroes, not to assume the worst in every conversation. Petra's not suspicious of the police because their systemic abuse of minorities and how they get away with it. She's suspicious of them because she's written too many twist villains. Petra's 5-minute conversation with Saint inspires her to crank out like 20 pages in a single night, and she tells herself that makes it okay to invite him back the next day on the false pretense of interviewing him. Petra becomes less insecure because she'll be writing reactions to a real-life person and embodies her confident main character when interacting with Saint. While they flirt, Saint reveals he Googled Petra last night and watched her TikTok videos. That's the reason why he couldn't sleep. Not because of the suicide he was in very close proximity to, but because he was researching the witness. Petra tells Saint that one of the scenes in her book is Cam kissing Rhea and having to leave because his wife called. And lo and behold, like a minute later, Saint's wife calls. And instead of picking up to his wife, he kisses Petra and then leaves. And of course, Petra feels guilty, but not that guilty. She personally doesn't feel like she's done anything wrong because this is research. Don't worry, Petra has done something wrong, but not for the reason you think. In the few days that pass, she feels even less guilty about kissing Saint, which is so great. I am so glad this is our main character whose thoughts we constantly have to hear. Why are women so pathetic sometimes? Men don't have to do a damn thing other than show up. Girl, what is this generalization? I'm pretty sure you're the only one who wants to feel pretty when she goes to meet up with a married man she's having an affair with. When they go out, Petra talks about her new book, how Cam is flawed with a temper that flares up whenever Rhea gets hurt, which is often because she's a lawyer with important evidence, to the point that her home is broken into and she's kidnapped. Then Saint asks her about the controversy. And you know what she says? I feel like the whole past year broke something inside me, till you kissed me. This is insane. She's been through a full year of death threats and declining book sales, not being able to write, and 3 interactions with this guy has cured her. She doesn't even know where he lives, or who his parents are, or what his wife's name is. This guy, this random cop whose hair color we don't even know, is single-handedly fixing you. What do you mean he sees through you? You've talked 3 times! But yeah, of course, this is Colleen's world. 3 interactions with a single average man will fix all of your problems. Call in now. Get teleported there. Nothing bad will happen to you. Can 3 interactions with this cop cure my mental illness? Well, it can cure Petra's. Just kidding. She's super mentally ill for the rest of the book. After another secretive date, Petra feels all floaty and happy before going to bed. And this is where I'm going to have to reiterate the trigger warning of physical abuse, because someone breaks into her home, cuts all of her power, drags her crying and screaming from bed, duct tapes her mouth, and ties her to a chair. She calls out Saint's name multiple times, assuming that it's him, and she asks him to stop. But then the person doesn't, and she realizes this might not be him, but just a stranger here to kill her. And she starts crying, praying, sobbing, just regretting all of her life, and just, she's stressed. It's horrible. It's a horrible scene to read, and I was so distressed as well. The person eventually leaves, and Petra gets out of her rope binds and finds her phone. But before she can call 911, Saint re-enters the house and finds her, and Petra realizes that yes, it was him who did this. No one else knew where she was, no one else would know how to cut the power, and no one else would be strong enough to restrain her. It was him. She breaks off and cries in the shower, in the dark, because the power is still cut off. You still with me? Good, because the next part made me close the book and sleep on whether I actually wanted to keep reading it. Saint enters to apologize. Petra, I'm sorry. Writing the script, I thought, oh, I should reread this chapter so I can be more accurate because it's been months. But no, reading the chapter still makes my blood pressure explode. I'm actually still seeing red because Petra immediately starts doubting herself. Did I want this? Do I have the right to be mad at him? Oh, I didn't lock the door. I must have wanted this. I'm going to read you verbatim what she was thinking when she told Saint about her book. Does anything bad happen to Rhea in your book? He asks, his voice low but full of genuine concern. Yes, I whisper. Normally I wouldn't spoil the plot for anyone, In this moment, I don't care. Saint isn't just anyone, and I doubt he'll ever read my work.
What happens to her?
Well, a lot actually. She loses her best friend. There's an attempted kidnapping. A car chase. Someone breaks into her house.
Saint's eyes narrow in concern. Does anyone ever hurt her?
Yes, I admit. She gets hurt towards the end of the book. The person who breaks into her house. After he ties her up, she realizes her arm is broken.
Saint runs the back of his fingers over my cheek as I speak. He seems so interested in my answers. It makes me wonder if he's planning to act any of these scenes out. Is that why I'm telling him about it? Because part of me hopes he does? Do I actually want to know what it's like to be kidnapped? To have a broken arm? No, that would be taking things a little too far. I'm not so sure I'm willing to go that deep for research. Regardless, Petra conceives that this was just a big misunderstanding. I would rather sit through a million hearing the wrong part of the conversation or seeing him with a woman that's actually his cousin than read through another attempted kidnapping. This is the last thing I pulled from the text because I just couldn't stand reading that chapter any longer. Petra tells Saint, quote, to make sure I'm actually asking you to do something before you do it from now on. Don't assume. And he promises he will. Remember that. In the notes I was keeping while reading, I wrote, if they have sex, I'm going to lose her. She is in no emotional state to be having sex right now. Well, guess what? They do have sex. Because what is consent anyway? He believed her when she lied that he didn't hurt her, so why would he care that she was crying her eyes out in a chair he tied her to and in a dark shower that he put her in not even an hour ago? This is the first time they're intimate with each other, and it's in the aftermath of him breaking into her cabin. This is when I actually started hating this book. This feeling in my chest of confusion and betrayal and anger of, oh, you think I'm stupid, that I haven't felt in a long time. The last book that made me feel this way was Suicide Notes. I hate that book because the main character immediately justifies the sexual assault he went through. And I hate this book because of the way Petra constantly justifies Saint's physical assault and the way he violates her space. And neither book shows that that justification was wrong. Ugh, I'm tired. Let's skip a bit. The only good thing that happens before is that Petra tries to follow Saint home. This is Shepard, Chloe, and Andy, Petra's husband and daughters. That's right, Petra is married. Immediately, she texts Saint, don't come over. Petra gets an hour of blissful guilt, stressing about how she's a horrible person and has ruined her family, which, hey, no objections there, before Saint shows up with some dumb visitor tag excuse. He deliberately ignored her message and just showed up just to see her be stressed and in pain. Wee! Shepard and her argue about expenses, and Petra does nothing to make herself look sympathetic. Because, just reiterating key facts here, Petra is cheating on her husband and is mad/guilty that her family has shown up and interrupted her affair. She has done nothing to defend herself in the controversy, but she doesn't want to look at expenses, even though they are at risk of losing their house. And I'll just reiterate this again because it's important. She is cheating on her husband with a guy she has known for less than a month. But Shepard has to be the villain, so he calls her a bitch.
You can't keep getting away with it!
Just like Petra looking at Shepard, I feel nothing. I wrote in my notes, quote, they're arguing now, the sort of bland, flustered married couple argument that makes me want to throw myself off a bridge like Miles' baby.
We both laughed at our son's big balls.
She calls Saint and immediately forgives him for showing up against her wishes because, quote, he wasn't lying about being married. Guess she lost her spine along with her fidelity. Then something happens. I can't say much about it because my parents will watch this and I've already said some risque stuff, but this is sexual assault. And the book doesn't mention that, but that is a serious crime. And Petra was compliant in it because she was aware that Saint was watching but didn't inform Shepard. Petra said she'd do it again. Yeah. The two immediately continue their affair after Shepard and the girls leave. They go on a picnic where we find out that Saint isn't even married. He's been divorced for 6 months because he and his wife couldn't have kids. Petra asks why he didn't tell her, and he says, you needed the inspiration. When he asks for advice, because the situation between him and his partner is complicated, Petra says, no, I don't know how to move on either, even though sometimes I want to, but you don't have kids, so maybe it isn't as hard for you. That is not the thing to say. Especially since his infertility is the reason why they couldn't have kids. Petra realizes this and immediately apologizes, even though, considering what he's put her through, she owes him no kindness. Saint accepts her apology, but says, I'm not going tit for tat about this, but not being able to have kids at all is a hell of a lot harder than divorcing someone you have kids with.
Oppression Olympics.
Let's go.
Colleen Hoover's history with writing pregnancy and kids is a mess. So it's disappointing to know that even now, with the little we know about Saint, we do know that he couldn't have kids and it irreversibly ruined his marriage. Not that that doesn't happen in real life, but it seems like whenever relationship drama is needed in Coho books, it's because of kids and pregnancy, which are always kept, unless the character is evil. Speaking of the kids, Petra temporarily returns home for one of her daughter's birthday parties. Which one? I don't know. They don't even say. But Petra is sort of happy. She has her neighbors, her friends, her daughters, Nora, and a mysterious black car in the distance that she instantly recognizes as Saint's. When she confronts him, he's still role-playing Cam like, you are in danger and you received death threats. Petra tells him to shut up and leave. She doesn't feel aroused or protected. The only thing she feels is frustration and disrespect, because when he told her to stay away from his real life. But when it comes to hers, he gets to do whatever he likes. When she comes back to the cabin and sees his car parked in the driveway, she's mad and happy and feels like she's crazy. And maybe she is, because the first thing she notices when she comes back in is that he's wearing clean socks and is cooking her lasagna. Aww, what a gentleman. Who wouldn't forgive this face making them lasagna, huh? Who wouldn't forgive this guy making her lasagna and wearing clean socks after he broke into her house and stalked her? Twice. Of course, because I bet you and I both saw this coming, Petra immediately forgives him. He says she's the one who started this because she tried to follow him home first, and he wasn't going to confront her husband because he's not trying to ruin her marriage. And Petra, weak as she is, folds like a wet paper towel. You think this can't get worse? Don't worry, it does, because it's Saint who manages to soothe her insecurities about writing and being harassed online. He validates her and values her and makes her feel special and cooks her lasagna. And you know what? I guess that's enough to forgive him for everything he's done. And that's a pretty typical Colleen Hoover book. Unhealthy power dynamics, straight up crimes, and main characters with no sauce. But we're missing one other thing. A plot twist. Petra wants to make dinner for her and Saint, and on the way to the grocery store, stops at a gas station. She notices the newspapers and sees there's nothing about the suicide or the car chase. When she asks the clerk, he says nothing of the sort has happened recently. Louis enters and also confirms that there haven't been any suicides, nor is there a detective in this part of town. In fact, when Petra shows them the one selfie she has of Saint, neither of them know him, even though it's a small town and they know everyone there. The gas station clerk has seen him around recently, but assumed he was living in a rental. And Louis adds that he's not staying in any of his rentals. So, Saint doesn't actually live here. And the suicide seemingly didn't happen, except the morning right after it did happen was the morning that Petra met Mari, and Mari knew about it. So, Petra goes to Mari immediately. At first, Mari denies it all, but then Louis shows up and can tell she's lying, so he makes her tell Petra, even though he doesn't know what it is, so that they don't get sued. Mari tells her that that night, there indeed was no car chase or suicide. She found Saint putting police lights on the road and confronted him. He said that it was a prank for Petra's inspiration and that Petra knew about it. Then he paid Mari to pretend she knew about it as well. Petra is crying immediately, makes some very lukewarm threats despite the gravity of the situation, and then goes back to her cabin to look up Saint online. Petra uses facial recognition software on the photo that she has of Saint and finds a LinkedIn and Facebook page that belongs to Eric Merrill Kingston, a screenwriter, and the number that Saint gave her matches Eric's number. With the one brain cell she has left, Petra immediately starts packing her things. And in the 2 seconds that she's gone from the kitchen, Saint immediately spawns in and reads what she has open on her laptop. She asks him everything important. Who is he really? Why is he doing this? Is he going to hurt her? And you know what he says? It's her fault. She wanted this because in her live video of Nora, she said she wanted to experience the things she wrote about. Saint Eric had watched every single one of her videos before they had even met. He's not married and never has been. When she tries to run to the bathroom to call 911, he grabs her by the elbow and yanks her back, throws her phone, and pushes her onto the bed. He berates her and accuses her of asking for all of it because she's way too open in her Q&As, which I did write in my notes that she should not have shown the live stream the interior of her cabin. Then we get to the most ridiculous part where Saint Eric says it's okay because she has been lying to the whole world by not disclosing that she was a wife and mother. Petra's pinned against a wall, trying not to cry and regretting her whole life. The one good thing she gets out of it is the title of the book because she realizes this is what rock bottom is. Woman down! And then he says, when you finish this book, dedicate it to Saint because he fucked that story out of you. And with that one single line, Petra suddenly is turned on. But she still wants to leave. And when she says so, instead of abiding her, Saint Eric kisses her. And you know what she does? She kisses him back. Eventually, she pushes away and books it out of the cabin. Flash forward to the release of Woman Down. Petra is finally meeting fans in person again and confirms that she was always Team Caleb, which was the character cut from the love triangle. You probably forgot that all happened. The cancel culture thing got completely sidelined by the plot, and if it doesn't care anymore, then neither do I. Of course, because he sucks, St. Eric shows up and asks her to sign his book. She does, and after the signing, she sees him talking with Nora and thinks, oh no, they're dating, I have to save her from him. She goes up to them and finds out they're friends from college. It was Nora who sent Eric to the cabin to give Petra inspiration, but she thinks that's where it ends. Eric didn't tell her about anything that happened after, and so guess what? Petra doesn't tell her about anything that happened after either. St. Eric has done a complete 180. He's suddenly sincere, apologetic, guilty, and Petra tells him she never wants to see him again, because that has totally worked the last few times she said that. She spends the last chapter of the book stewing about how bad her life is while reading her own book's Goodreads reviews. Despite the fact that just the other page she was talking about punching and choking Nora out, she's already decided to forgive her. The final line of Woman Down is an email from St. Eric for a reservation at the cabin next year. I think it's time we start working on your next book. Wow, that was a lot. Derogatory. So let's give ourselves a break and give this book some minute kudos. There's a fair bit of foreshadowing about Petra being married, which is cool. Eric is mentioned in her live stream as he's someone who asked her a question. I like how her showing the stream her cabin is important later on. There's not as many Colleen-isms in the inner monologue or dialogue. The characters are annoying, but I don't think they talk too unrealistically. Alright, that's it. Why is Nora so committed to getting Petra to cheat on her husband? She tells Petra she needs to have sex to get inspiration, sends St. Eric over, and then asks her if the cop was hot after. But Nora was at the birthday party, meaning she knows Petra is married. And when Petra says she tried to ruin my marriage, Nora's confused. So is she selectively amnesic, or is she just a horrible person? I think Woman Down is an effective thriller, but it's very emotionally exhausting to read. This cast is small, the plot is tight with little subplots. So it's about 200 pages of cheating with little distraction. I hated Petra. Listening to her pull reasons out of her ass to excuse her cheating was so irritating. But as pathetic, insecure, and insufferable as she was to read, the fact that she gets tossed around by St. Eric this entire book with no consequences for him sucks. Petra has no autonomy. All of the plot is driven by St. Eric pushing their boundaries and making her feel scared. The one time she tries to be active is when she tries to follow him home, and then she never does something like that again because he her. Petra doesn't tell Nora and Mari about the abuse. She doesn't sue Mari and Louis. She doesn't even turn Saint away when he shows up to the book signing. Every time she tries to exert her will by telling Saint, oh, don't do anything without asking me, you gotta make sure I'm okay with it first, or I never want to see you again, Saint ignores her, exerting his will over hers and ignoring her authority. Petra can't even control her own actions, as she often describes her attraction to him as her own body betraying her. I only realized this after reading Emily Henry's newest book, which I liked, sue me, but Petra doesn't have a backstory. We only know stuff about her that's happened in the last year. We don't know anything about her childhood, her parents, her formative experiences, her friends, but she doesn't have any of those, so I guess I can excuse that. It makes Petra very, very unsympathetic because I feel like a lot of readers are already not moved by her being cancelled and uninspired motive, so giving us some insight into what else made her this way could have been very helpful. She hasn't even changed by the end of the book. She starts the book financially struggling, lonely, one friend, mentally low, and in an unhealthy marriage. She ends the book financially fine, lonely, no friends, mentally in shambles, and in an unhappy marriage. She doesn't reflect on why she cheated on her husband or how she lets other people's opinions get to her way too much. She doesn't reflect on how viciously happy she was to ruin someone else's marriage, which means the only point of all that assault and pain was inspiration. It worked. That's the messed up message of the book. Being forced to go through the pain your characters go through by your stalker will make you a better writer. St. Eric reserves the cabin for her next year, and it's a question, is she going back? And the answer is yes, duh, she's going back. This guy fixed her insecurities in a month, and she didn't even know what his middle name was. She is desperately hooked on his attention and affection for seemingly no other reason than the fact that he was the first guy to give it to her when she needed it the most. St. Eric's characterization is all over the place. 75% of the time he's Nathaniel Saint, who is clearly not a good man, but that's what Petra likes about him. He's mysterious and nonchalant, but most importantly, married, and completely dedicated to inspiring Petra, even if that means he commits a few crimes. Eric Merrill Kingston in that one scene is a deranged stalker who thinks he's entitled to knowing about Petra's personal life and blames her for everything he did because, quote, she wanted it. It's disturbingly similar to Darvo. He is so obsessed with Petra that within the day that Nora tells him that she needs inspiration and him knocking at her door, he bought a gun, police lights, and a fake wedding ring, forges a fake police badge, makes business cards with the Saint alias, books a cabin in the same area as Petra, pays off a witness, and comes up with a fake tragic crime that warrants him meeting her. Then Saint Eric at the bookstore is like, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm really sorry. And then Nathaniel Saint emails her that night like, I'm ready to abuse you again. Obviously, he doesn't go on a character arc. I can't really analyze him because we know nothing about him. His actions are bad, but the bar is in hell. Thank God they're not seen as romantic. Petra is just in fear every time he does something unhinged, but then forgives him and doesn't do anything about it. So while Nathaniel Saint does not go on the long list of Colleen Hoover love interests that glorify abuse, he does go on the lower shelf of abuse happens in this book and nothing is done because this character has no support system to turn to. I started keeping a tally of all the crimes that Saint commits, a la Marseille. For the stalking, I'm going to make it a felony since Saint commits a bunch of other crimes while he does the stalking. Impersonating a police officer is just a misdemeanor. Contrary to Petra's beliefs, leaving the door unlocked and Saint having no intention of actually hurting her doesn't make it okay that he broke into where she was staying. Plus the fact that he actually did hurt her. But I gave him a lower sentence since he didn't enter with the intent to commit a felony, just the misdemeanor of assault. The voyeurism is also on the lower side since the most serious charges are for recording and the involvement of minors. But because Saint did it for his own arousal, the court would order him to register as a sex offender. I don't know how Saint got into the cabin at the end of the book, so let's just give him the same sentence as before, plus 2 more counts of assault. In total, if Saint Eric was actually punished for his crimes, he'd go to jail for 13 years, 180 days, have to pay $36,000, and register as a sex offender. But he's not, and there's actually an in-story reason for why Petra doesn't go to the police, something 2 different characters tell her. She's having an affair. Saint says, what are you going to do about it? Tell your husband? Which shows just how isolated Petra is. She has nobody and probably will not have anybody but Saint, who holds the power of the affair over her, Nora, who she doesn't trust, and Shepard, who she is in an unhappy marriage with, and she obviously can't tell him she cheated on him. So Saint just gets away with it, and it's very dejecting. Not even in a realistic bad people get away with crimes way, but because it's just another Coho character who gets away with crimes against his love interests. I didn't talk that much about Louis and Mari because their subplots were very detached from Saint Eric until the very end. It was just Petra listening to Mari talk about her old acting career, which was only relevant so Mari could perform about the suicide case to Petra. The cancel culture stuff dies up pretty quickly, which I am so grateful for, because if I had to read 200 pages of cheating and cancel culture BS, I would also be a woman down, at the bottom of the ocean. Like Miles's, reading Woman Down was miserable and emotionally draining. It's a badly written trauma porn that disrespects its audience and has nothing to say about censorship or abuse. 0 out of 5. I was aware of it before, but now I sincerely believe it in my heart of hearts. Colleen Hoover hates women. She does this shit in every single book, and she's going to keep doing it because it clearly makes her so much money. She would have to, give up her spleen before she makes her male love interest not completely abusive towards the main character. I am so thoroughly done with this book. Thank you for watching. I'm going to go watch the Backrooms movie and actually enjoy myself.
Update, it was peak.
And then go watch everyone else's Woman Down Rose. Bye. Pusheen also says bye. Bye.